In 2003, a 14-year-old girl vanished from the busy streets of Blackpool, England. Her name was Charlene Downes, and according to police, she may have been murdered, and her body disposed of in one of the most grotesque ways imaginable. But here's the thing, despite multiple arrests, 2 criminal trials and an entire police task force, Charlene's case remains unsolved, and her disappearance didn't just shatter a family, it exposed a shocking underworld of child exploitation. One that authorities were slow, and some say unwilling, to confront. Charlene Downes was just 14 years old when she disappeared. She lived in Blackpool with her parents and 3 siblings. Home life wasn't always easy. Accounts suggest a strict and sometimes volatile household. Like many teenagers in Blackpool at the time, Charlene found herself spending more and more time on the streets and in the bustling seafront arcades. By 2003, she was drifting away from home. According to later police reports, Charlene had become entangled with much older men who showered her with food, drink, and attention. Investigators believe she was a victim of child grooming, part of a wider network operating in the town at the time. On November 1st, 2003, Charlene spent the day with friends. That evening, she was last seen near the North Pier in Blackpool, a place alive with tourists, flashing lights, and fast food takeaways. After that, Charlene simply vanished. She never went home, she never contacted her family again, and no trace of her has ever been found. At first, Charlene was treated as a missing person, but as days turned into weeks, investigators uncovered something darker. They believed Charlene had been targeted by men connected to local takeaway restaurants, part of a wider grooming network preying on vulnerable girls. Eventually, suspicion focused on 2 men. Ayad Albataki, the owner of a Blackpool takeaway shop, Mohammed Raveshi, his business associate. Police alleged that Albataki had murdered Charlene and that Raveshi had helped dispose of her body. And what the police claimed was horrifying. They suggested Charlene's body had been dismembered and that parts of it may even have been used in takeaway food. The case went to trial in 2007. Albataki was charged with murder and Raveshi with assisting in the disposal of a body. But despite the disturbing allegations, the jury could not reach a verdict. A retrial was scheduled, but soon abandoned. Why? Because the Crown Prosecution Service admitted the evidence was riddled with errors. Transcripts of surveillance tapes were unreliable, key witness testimonies were inconsistent, and inexperienced officers had been assigned to critical parts of the investigation. By 2009, the Independent Police Complaints Commission released a damning report. It said Lancashire Constabulary had mishandled the case from the very beginning, to the point where convictions were now impossible. And just like that, Charlene's family were left with no justice. But out of this tragedy, something larger emerged. Charlene's disappearance forced authorities to acknowledge that Blackpool, like many towns across the UK, had a serious child exploitation problem. In 2004, Police and Social Services launched Project Awaken, a multi-agency task force designed to identify vulnerable children, disrupt grooming gangs, and bring abusers to justice. And it worked. To an extent. Project Awaken identified hundreds of at-risk young people and led to prosecutions of offenders. It was hailed as a pioneering model for tackling exploitation, but critics say the system still failed. Policies weren't updated as grooming tactics evolved, and even today, Blackpool records the highest number of sexual offences in Lancashire. Charlene's family never stopped fighting. Campaign groups like Justice for Charlene began demanding a full national inquiry into grooming gangs, arguing that cases like hers were swept under the rug. In 2025, the government announced a rapid national audit of child exploitation cases and several localised inquiries. But they stopped short of a full statutory national inquiry. For Charlene's loved ones, it wasn't enough. On the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, campaigners staged silent protests outside the Blackpool council offices. Their message: break the silence on child abuse. It has now been more than 20 years since Charlene Downes walked into the night and never returned. Her case remains open, but cold. What happened to Charlene that evening in Blackpool? Was she murdered as the police once alleged? Was her body really disposed of in the way investigators feared? Or is the truth buried somewhere in the botched case files of Lancashire Constabulary? We may never know. But one thing is for certain: Charlene's disappearance forced the country to confront an uncomfortable truth: that vulnerable children are being preyed upon in plain sight, and too often ignored, until it's too late. Charlene Downes' story is not just about one missing girl, it's about systemic failure, about how cracks in the system allow predators to slip through, and about a family still waiting, after 2 decades, for justice.